Call the meeting to order. This is our preliminary budget meeting for the fiscal year June 1st, 2024 to May 31st, 2025. And just for the record, the mayor is present, Trustee Corish, Trustee Flum, and Trustee Kane. And Deputy Mayor Hay is not present with us. I believe he's not feeling well. That's why he's absent. With that being said, I will turn the meeting over to our treasurer, Charles, to go over the preliminary budget.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're going to talk about the general fund primarily. There's sewer fund information in the deck, but we still need to develop that further, including some actual rates to better get estimates on the revenues and expenses.
Yes.
We'll focus on the general fund tonight. The preliminary budget that we've put together reflects the input we've gotten from all of the departments. And for the most part, we've reflected in the budget what they've asked for, more or less, right? Pretty close. We really haven't denied anything yet, but as you'll see, I think there's some decisions to be made. So the preliminary budget, the appropriations that have been requested are $15.6 million, which is a 4% increase over the last budget, which is obviously the current year. Those appropriations will be funded by tax revenues. And for this purpose, we've set the taxes at the maximum allowable by the cap, about a 2.5% increase. So we haven't gone over the cap. That's about $218,000 additional tax revenue. And then we've estimated our revenues from the various village services and governmental entities. That's $5.7 million. So to round out the budget, to balance out the budget, we've got a $978,000 appropriated fund balance request into the budget. So we have $15.6 million of appropriations, about 14.6 something million of revenue, and 980,000 of appropriated fund balance to balance the budget. You know, having an appropriation of fund balance in our budget is not at all unusual. The 900,000 is a little bit more than in the past. Last year was 656,000, and in years before that, it was about 500, 400. So it's always been a practice for us to include some element of that. The good news is, if you look at the last couple completed years, fiscal year 21, fiscal year 22, fiscal year 23, we ran surpluses, whether it was a combination of good cost constraints, as well as maybe some revenue better than expected. It wasn't necessary to set aside any fund balance. And actually, we ran surpluses, which is good, went right to our overall unrestricted fund balance. So if we look at the appropriations, I think the trustees and the mayor have a sheet, second page, that shows appropriations and revenues. But I'd like to do is highlight the major changes in this year's budget from last year's budget. So we start with the appropriations. Last year, 15.0 million. This year, 15.6 million, 4% increase. The vast majority of the increase is in our personnel costs, medical benefits, retirement, LoSAP, being all going up significantly, right? So I think every company, medical costs, our insurance costs, I mentioned in our last monthly meeting, just business insurance. Insurance is very expensive. As you know, medical has been expensive. And, you know, for retirement and LoSAP, I think, in addition to costs going up, we have more people becoming eligible for higher benefits into those programs. Aside from that, I think you could see our other cost increases are relatively modest. General support, public safety. You know, we are adding a few new people. We've got a new person, one net new in the clerk's office, and we have 2 net new people in the budget for the police department. In addition, there's an open position in the budget for a mechanic in the garage, same as last year. So no increased budget, but there is another headcount.
If I could just interrupt you for a second, Charles. Yes. Speaking of the police department, so we've already accounted for 2 new full-time officers?
In the budget.
Okay, so we also have, speaking with Lieutenant Drake, we wanted to add another police officer. What that would amount to, though, would basically, we're in discussions with the school. They would pay half of a median income salary for a police officer. So it wouldn't be a full off on top of what you have already. Yes, it would be another officer, but the salary would be paid at least half, maybe slightly more by the school.
Okay.
So that's just something to consider.
Would that person's role predominantly be?
There would be certain times of the day that we would designate somebody,
Someone.
not necessarily the officer that we hire. It could be somebody that has some more experience or is, has a couple of years under their belt to be it, or it may be the entry officer. But I wanted to give the lieutenant the flexibility to move people around, and
Smart.
they would be dedicated to that, to the school, outside the school for certain hours, when the school first opens, I believe, and when the school is at recess would be the times that the officer would be there. And the school, like I said, has talked to us and we're in the process of working out the deal. But public safety is a big thing. I mean, as you know, we've gone through, it's been a long time since last summer, but it's quite a burden on our police officers, and we need the personnel.
Okay. In the discussions with the school district, the benefits are almost as good as the salary.
Right.
So if they could fund a portion of the benefits as well, that would certainly be
okay.
worthwhile.
Like I said, we're still working out that number.
Yep.
So.
And then you see on the sheet, there's two large decreases in expense or appropriations versus last year. The first is transportation. So we had the harbor boat in the budget for this current year, right? We're almost done. That'll be delivered very shortly. So that's paid for. Don't have it in the budget next year. So that's a net decrease. And then for the
Culture and recreation.
Yeah, that was actually a lot, but I'm sorry. The harbor boat is culture and recreation. Transportation is the street lighting project.
And
That's it.
fully funded, right? We've already paid
it's done.
So we're getting the benefit of the LED lights automatically.
Correct. And we don't have to spend that money. That was about $330,000, I think. Don't have to spend that money this year.
It's a good 80% savings in
electricity. So that will pay for itself over the course of a few years.
And the culture, as you mentioned, culture and recreation is the harbor boat that's already paid for. So net, the appropriations aren't changing much in total, but the key message there is benefits are going up, and they'll keep going up.
Think they go this much every year? I mean, I don't, you can't say, but it's what I bet a reasonable assumption.
Could be, right? Lack of other, right? There's nothing unusual going on there.
Yeah.
We're adding people, and I think people get more seniority and maybe they get more benefits, but that'll continue to happen. So I think that's indicative of what to expect.
I may have missed this, but on the revenue side, harbors and docks is negative 132, 100.
But we're going to get to that now.
Oh, you're going to get to that now. So,
yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
So we were talking about the appropriations.
Yeah.
And now on the revenue side, you can see the major increases in the taxes. So again, we increased taxes 2.5% as permitted under state law without having to go to get a referendum to pierce the cap. The harbor and docks revenue kind of reflects our approach to revenue in total. We're pretty conservative with all our revenue. And there's good reason, right? We don't know, is the weather going to be good? Are people going to come visit to the same extent? And in the case of the building department, what's the construction activity? It was huge 2 years ago, it's come down. So we tend to be pretty conservative. So there's no factual reason why we made it less, other than we kind of brought it back down to 22, 23 actual level.
Gotcha. So managing expectations so that we're operating in the real world and surprises will be on the plus side.
Correct, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And those good surprises help fund other things, whether it's stuff we wanted to do that didn't make it into the budget, or you also have unexpected.
Yeah.
And I think Bob has mentioned that the docks, there are going to be certain portions of the docks we can't use.
So, so we're not using the north end now, so we have to take that into consideration.
How much was that
That was over 30. I don't know the exact number.
Right.
So that with that, and, you know, the big uptick was the transient docks being completed.
Right.
And so just the same as we know, like the increase or the savings in electricity will help pay for the LED.
Sure.
The revenue that we'll get from the transient docks will help pay for these, building those.
They were open last year, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was the up, you know, the only negative is the north end of Longworth, which we're gonna keep open.
Yeah, which I think is a good thing for the community.
Absolutely.
So again, you know, the theme for the revenue is we're conservative. The docks, we brought it back to the level of 2 years ago. The building department, we increased by $10,000. But we're this year, current fiscal year, we're already at that level. So, you know, the spring is probably people will start doing more activity, but without knowing how much, we're keeping it pretty much a little bit above last year's level. And the same thing for the Justice Court. Our budget for the Justice Court, same as last year, and we're going to exceed last year's numbers. So we'll have, this will be good news when we have money to spend on other things or put in the fund balance to do other projects in the future.
Is the appropriated fund balance, is that free floating sum that can be used for more or less anything?
It's kind of like in a corporate sense, your retained earnings, right? So if next year we decided to run a deficit and spend more than our budget, we have a fund balance to absorb that without going negative. Now, this 978 represents about 8% of our fund balance. We have like an $11 million unrestricted fund balance. We have restricted fund balances for specific purposes. I'll talk about that in a minute. But unrestricted, about $11 million. So, you know, it's a big number, but it's also, I think, within our comfort zone if this is how things play out.
Right. What interest do we earn on that?
Well, you know, we earn interest on the cash.
On the cash side.
So this is kind of a ledger balance.
Right.
So on the cash in our main money market account, we get about 5.2%. There we have a which is really not touched. We just, you know, that's kind of our cash reserves, I'll say. We have other money market accounts at M&T that gets up 2-something%, much lower balance. Then of course we have checking that.
Sure, it's not much.
Right.
But the bulk of our money gets close to 5%.
Who handles those investments? Who decides where to put that money?
It's all in very safe.
Well, I know.
I guess historically the treasurer or maybe
I'm just curious, that never occurred to me.
yeah. So I assume the treasurer, but I haven't changed anything.
Okay.
And they're basically in money markets, checking accounts.
Yeah, no question on that, I'm just wondering who decides.
Okay, any other questions on the revenue?
My only concern, and I brought this up to you, was that the DPW and the police department do not have a reserve for vehicles. So if D needs a vehicle or a dump truck or a pickup truck, it's right, we have to come up, or that's going to take a hit to the budget.
Right.
So my idea was to start a reserve fund for the DPW, for the police department, so that we could take some money and put it into that fund over time. So when these vehicles come up, or if D has 50,000 or 60,000 in there, he wants a new pickup truck, it's there. It's not a big hit to the budget. Same thing with the police department. If one of their cruisers ages out, just as we do in the fire department, boom, they could change one. You know, get on it. I'm sure they're on a rotation, or they know which vehicles need to be changed over how many years they're going to need to be changed. So currently that's not in their budget. Is that correct?
So reserve fund is not, but actually that's my next topic, which
Right.
you don't have a page for that.
Okay.
Some comments I want to make in terms of special items. So we do have capital items every year. There's capital items in the budget. You know, we mentioned the boat. That was obviously a large item. The fire department had, and the police department have had vehicles in their budget, but it's a year-to-year thing. So when you do it, it's every other year. When you do it, budget jumps up 50%. And then the next year, maybe it's zero. And what happens is that money goes somewhere else. But in our current budget, in terms of special items and capital items, I know there's a lot of talk about a lot of projects around town that we either need RFPs, requests for proposals, or engineering studies. So right now in the budget, in the village office, there's about $115,000 for engineering and consulting, which in the past have largely gone to Cameron or others like that. You know, projects, I know we have the cityscape cell tower survey that we've agreed to. There's some DPW site planning, traffic, parks, drainage.
Which on that note, I'm waiting for a proposal, we're gonna put out an RFP, I'm gonna bring it up now, to do some drilling and boring up at the DPW site where we plan to move the DPW up on the turnpike to see what's in the soil before we come up with a site plan and we move this project forward. And that's something that we're gonna need to do no matter what. It's our property. We really should do that to cover ourselves and to get a better idea of what the cost of a project up there will be. Is there nothing there? We don't have to be concerned with it, or is there some mitigation that might be needed?
Right.
So,
By the way, just some.
I was told that it was the price would be between 15 and 20,000 to do that for these holes.
You might find that some areas more suitable than others.
Correct.
Right.
For development.
Yeah.
So we have 115,000 for projects like that. And I think we have a number of them. We don't have any firm estimates, but I know there's a lot of.
How much of that, Aiden, do you think the sewer will need, or are you basically funded with?
We're funded, we have to, you know, we're working our way through all of the grants.
Right.
And all of the different contracts. I mean, each one comes with its own set of regulations. One of the questions I did have on that is we have been talking about this idea of having village-wide project manager. I was wondering, is that amount in the budget?
That is not in here.
Okay.
I have that in my sewer capital budget at the moment.
So this would, so we were thinking more broadly than just sewer. I mean, obviously, the main aspect of this would be sewer in the beginning, but there's all sorts of other village projects coming down the pike. And this is something we can discuss as to whether this is a sewer-oriented position.
Or is it a generalized position?
Or is it a generalized position, which would would be funded both by the sewer and the general and the village fund. So we would have to sit down and discuss sort of a division of cost,
labor and
cost and everything else. Maybe initially it might be easier to have it as the big project is going to be sewer. If we start off there, because that would be the vast majority of this work, and then we can, you know,
see how that works.
Yep. I mean, I'm open to all sorts of suggestions as we're in the conversation period here as to how best to do this.
And then it's identifying who the individual is.
Yeah, I'm still working with putting together a job description that we can share and look at. These are the questions of whether is it just sewer or is it more broad. Right now, I'm working on a broader job description, but I'll separate it out so we can pick and choose.
If it was just sewer and it was just sewer construction.
Yeah.
That could be subbed out to, so to speak, right, to a firm of some kind.
It's not that end of it. It's not the engineering, because that.
No, I mean engineering. I mean you actually oversee oversight of the whole thing.
We need someone in Village Hall who who's contacting all the homeowners, police department. Okay. So it's more someone who has sort of an overview of all the projects going on in the village. So in the middle of this, we might have Suffolk County Water coming into town. They're digging up the street. And who's following up on all of the grants have to be managed, and all of the invoicing has to be tracked and has to be accounted for. We'll have women and minority owned business aspects of this. So it's not so much,
it's a lot of work.
It's a huge amount of work. And
it's so pretty specialized.
A lot of it is sort of general project management. When it comes to any of the strict engineering aspects of this, that'll be a skill set we'll be hiring in from Cameron, who, you know, who's going to be out on the street making sure that the work is being performed in an acceptable manner. That's not something I would expect this person to do.
It's a lot of logistics and the follow-up on the grants.
Yeah, and we have to remember in all of these conversations that all these grants are reimbursement grants. Like, we don't get the money, we have to spend the village's money, and we need to make sure that our record keeping in every aspect of managing the project is in accordance with the requirements of the grant, so that when we sit down for reimbursement, and we're hoping to be able to get reimbursement, as we've discussed, maybe between 30 and 120 days. So we can roll over the village money. So it's a big job, it's an important job. So we'll be meeting again, obviously, on this when we're talking about the sewer grants. So we can see how we want to divide this. There's also lots of other grants that need to be looked after and traced, not just sewer. We have Havens Beach grant, which is going on. We have grants that are still open on Sandbank Park. We have the grant for the
the $250,000 grant for the boat.
we have the boat and all, you know, some of them, grants are almost, the more success we have in getting the grants, the more responsibility we have in managing them. So it's sort of, it's a double-edged sword, and the managing, and those Kate could attest to, it's a really big job. You know, it's a huge amount of work that needs to be done properly. And we also have the master plan.
Yeah, to the clerk's credit and her staff, they've been doing a lot of this work
Yes.
so far, and they've been making sure that they follow up, so.
Yeah. And there's, you know, all sorts of, we're sort of also trying to figure out what other aspects of daily village life could this person help overseeing, maybe, you know, coordinating all the different events that are in town, or there might be other aspects that we could discuss.
So to answer your question, it's not in these numbers.
Yeah.
It's in the sewer budget.
Right.
And we
So
can
it is-
decide, you know, we want to allocate part, or even over time, maybe initially this person is 90% involved.
That might be a way to
Sewer,
start
and
this,
then
yeah.
over time, it kind of evens
Yeah.
out.
Could be sewer and grants. Because that would be a big aspect.
Mm.
Anyhow,
Full-time position, is your think of that?
I think for the sewer, it will be once
Yeah.
we start.
Yeah, they're gonna have to coordinate.
Yeah.
So in terms of other capital items for the police department, we have a new vehicle in here, about $60,000 in this budget. Fire department, we don't have any, we have 70,000 for general equipment, which is consistent from year to year. But we're also adding to the reserves, first for the fire truck, $200,000. The existing balance is 538, so that would bring that up to 738. I don't think that's enough, but we're adding 65,000 more than last year.
I think the next vehicle in the, I think it could be a Class 8 pumper that's up next to be replaced. Or I wonder if it's Montauk's truck, 715, which is not currently a Class 8 pumper. It could be Montauk, Michael. So, which is, I don't even want to say it.
Years and more years.
Well, it has rescue tools on it, but it's what they call classically a hose cart. But it does have a pump on it.
Well, those things have a built-in time life.
Yes, yeah.
Lifetime.
So in addition, we're adding to the air pack reserve 30,000, which is an increase over this year. Existing reserve balance is 78, so that'll with this budget. Ambulance department, equipment, general equipment, 25,000, same budget as this current year. We're adding 15,000 to the vehicle reserve. Reserve right now is 294,000, so that's about 10%. And we're adding 20,000 to the equipment reserve, which would put that at $550,000.
So the vehicle reserve is for the ambulance?
Yeah.
And typically you don't use that for the ambulance, Missy, you use it.
No, our reserve is for our first responders.
Okay,
I think that's, are you talking about fire department?
no, ambulance corps.
So there's a vehicle reserve.
Yeah, you would took 15,000 a year, yeah. It's not.
It's the addition, but the balance in the reserve.
Oh, what
is-
our balance
is
is.
like
Oh, I'm sorry.
294.
Yeah, I knew that. Thank you.
What's your next first responder that needs to
We
be?
just bought two, we're good for another 10 years. Actually, no, I take that back.
I was gonna say, wow, yeah.
Okay, so moved.
The car I've been replaced in 3 years.
Dee needs a pickup truck, you know what I'm saying? All
We
right,
got that's the next item. He's
All
got,
right.
we got him on the low end. He's already working on me.
it's good that we're not short in that area, let's just say that. We're, you know, that's good.
So we have 47,000 to the highway department for stock. And
So they will be getting a truck this year, the highway department, okay,
Yeah. He wants a bigger one.
good. And then,
Is that a pickup or is that?
That's a 47 is like,
that's a pickup, a dump truck company another 10 or 12, almost 60. So
All right.
we saw.
And then for the harbor and docks, we have 40,000 for capital. As you know, we spent a lot of money between the boat and then the renovations on the docks. So it's much lower this year, but consistent with the past, but 40,000 for capital. And also they're talking about doing an RFP for
ADOC.
renovation. So that money was added to kind of cover.
Zadok, the retaining line? No.
It's over,
That way, okay.
right off the beacon.
Yep.
It's the one going straight out. And the idea is to do the RFP in, 24, 25, but probably it'll be 26 when it will actually get done. But you just want to start
Be
the
prepared,
process.
Sure.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely.
So those are the highlights, right? The large expenditures, the revenue, very conservative. I think we'll exceed that. Things have gone as they're going currently. We have some capital. I understand the mayor would like to add some reserves for areas like highway, police, where we do it kind of on an ad hoc basis.
Yeah, we talked about that, about boosting up, I guess we would call it reserve or adding to the reserve. Which the numbers that you had shown me, we would, well, obviously we would pierce the cap, but the amount per $1,000 of assessed value as compared to last year, I believe we went up 1.29%, or what was the?
So the current budget,
Right.
which is at the cap, and if you assume the assessed valuation of properties goes up by 1%, the mill rate would go up by 1.5%.
Oh,
If we pierce the cap and say instead of 2.5 at the cap, add another 2.5, doubled it, the mill rate would go up by close to 4%, 3.9, which would generate for us another $220,000 to fund reserves or if there's other expenditures.
220 would be at the 3.9%? All
Would be
right,
the incremental tax revenue to the village.
right, okay, got it.
From piercing the cap at a 5% rate.
And then the thing that we discussed together was sort of, if we do that, then that raises the baseline. So then in the years to come, our baseline will be higher and we won't really be subject to piercing the cap if we're responsible as we have been. We could stay at the cap or just under the cap.
Correct.
So it's like either take a hit now, or we go through this dance every year where we're kind of getting close and then, all right, well, we barely passed the cap, pierce the cap. Or do we do this to build up our reserves and then the baseline stays at a certain level? So it's something to think about, something to consider as we move forward.
If you want, we can go through the details, or if there's any specific questions, we could.
I would like to have a chance to study.
Yeah.
If we do pierce the cap, what does that do to, do we get viewed differently on rating if we're going to issue a bond, or does it impact anything?
That we're talking about? No.
Okay,
I don't think we're subject to referendum on the person, the school budget is.
Law.
It's a local.
We have to adopt the local
law.
So it becomes public.
Yeah.
Yes, obviously, absolutely, but the school board is subject to a referendum to pierce the cap, but we're not. It's a local law.
that's what I just want to make sure, yeah.
I would just say, some of these things that I'm bringing up that we're asking for are things that are needed. I mean, the DPW definitely needs trucks. I mean, they work hard, they're put on the road a lot. And D, to his credit, has not really asked us or pushed us to do these things. He's been very conservative, I would say, over time. But, things being as they are, they're gonna time out. Same thing with the police cars, Michael, right? I believe we're having issues.
Yeah, I mean, last year we lost one to Lemon Law, I guess you'd call it,
Right.
that Ford had to buy back.
All right,
We had another one total. we right now have 2 fully equipped patrol cars. And I'd say 2 are like 1 patrol car right now. One's on its dying breath, and the other one's up around 80,000 miles now, I think. And I mean,
What's the lead time to get a patrol car?
So that's also taken a hit this year in a big way. You can't get a Ford Explorer anymore like we drive, because of COVID and production being shut down. And then when they did reopen, everything got bought at once.
Sure.
So my understanding is Ford doesn't even have a 2024 Ford police patrol vehicle.
Wow.
They have taken the whole 24 and made them 23s, and they will not be available again until April of 25. Suffolk County, East Hampton Town are switching to Dodge Durangos in the meantime. It seems to be the only vehicles we can get right now that are patrol capable.
Gotcha. What's the lead time on them?
So the Dodges are pretty readily available. It's just, us outfitting them. So the lights and putting in computers and stuff like that, which, depending on companies we go with, some of them have all that stuff in stock, some of them it's kind of piecemeal
Gotcha.
coming in. But, I mean, if I got a car today, technically I'd say probably 2 weeks.
Right.
Well, that's good.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
And I was just in touch with somebody that has Dodges that, they sell wholesale from their lot, so. The Dodges are available, but everything else seems to not so much.
Take some time.
Yeah.
Might be, that's a stopgap to get them through.
Yeah, the other thing that's available is Tahoes, but they're huge and expensive.
Yeah, they are
They're
huge, aren't
made
they?
for our little roads and they're pricey.
Yeah.
We got the one last year, I think it was $60,000, almost $70,000. And I mean, that's not fully fit up like our patrol cars are.
Right.
That's more of a supervisor car. So like I just put the computer and stuff in it now, which is another $7,000 on top of the purchase price. Which that came with lights and stuff. But I mean, yeah, with patrol car, we're looking at upwards of $60,000 now, computer, everything,
Right.
soup to nuts. Granted, if we're taking 1 hour rotation, we can kind of throw some stuff from the old car in. But now switching to Dodges, the cages won't fit.
Right.
On the boards, so it
Different.
becomes.
So, yeah, I hear you.
So you try to keep everything the same, or?
Yeah, we've tried.
Right.
Of course, Ford likes to switch stuff too, but now switching to a completely different manufacturer, but it looks like we're gonna have to no matter what. It's gonna be we're gonna buy brand new stuff for everything.
Charles, do we get to amortize this, or we take the hit the year of the bought?
It's expensed all the same year.
It's expensed all in the same year.
The only way it gets spread out is if you finance it, and then the finance cost, you pay for the vehicle with financing,
Right.
then the financing cost runs out for multiple years.
Do people ever lease these vehicles?
Oh, you could, I guess.
I don't know if this has been mentioned too, but our chief's car is actually now one of our patrol cars.
Oh, yeah,
So it's been put in,
We had to
into
put that into
full-time
rotation.
service.
We didn't
into
have-
rotation.
We didn't have car, so we had to get that outfit. So there's no chief's car current.
I think Gene mentioned, would piercing the cap affect our rating? I think we have a very good Moody's rating. And our fund balance is very strong. The 11 million compared to 15 million a year of expenditures is pretty solid. We've got a lot of cushion there, which is good news. We also have about $3.5 million of debt from the Long Wharf and lease and fire, right? All of them. And that's going to come off at about $500,000 or $600,000 a year. So that's working its way off nicely. But we are looking at short term, right? Taking out more debt with the sewer project.
Right.
The good news is at least the initial phases are fully funded by grants, so it's going to be temporary. We'll have to borrow to pay the construction costs. Then as the grants come in, we can repay the debt. So
And roll it over, so it's very short term.
Yeah.
There's one thing you mentioned earlier when we were talking about hiring this person, and it's probably a question for this Vale the next time we're all together. It's my understanding that you cannot charge an existing sewer service area, you can't charge the existing customers anything or that will cost to expand the system. So if we're gonna hire who's gonna oversee the expansion, that's not a fair cost to put on the existing. And the sewer districts have some very different financing rules. So it's something we're checking out as to whether I don't believe it would be an appropriate cost for the existing service.
Can we raise the rates in general?
Oh, yeah, we do. Dee and I will now be sitting down and going through the rates for the sewer rent, which is for the infrastructure, and then the rate, which is for for the use.
Okay,
I think a lot of what we do affects the budget. A lot of the
Yeah.
things that we propose and push forward and. So we're gonna have some discussions, whether that's in public at the meetings,
Yeah, oh,
to get the public involved and see
Yeah.
what projects they support, which ones they're not supporting, or they're,
Hesitant.
yeah. So,
and also for this person, we have to look at the grants, that possibly if we're gonna hire this man, like, production manager, whatever you want to, how to describe it, just for the sewer project, there's a possibility that we might be able to, if we dig into the grant, this is different grants, we might be able to fund that person out of the grants. I don't know the answer to that. That's a Jen Messiano's veil question.
You think they have something for oversight and administration? Maybe not.
They're all quirky. They all have their own rules. We haven't really dug into the contract for the New York State grant at all. We just know that we were awarded this.
presumably though, if that person was working for the construction company or Cameron, they charge it to us, it would be covered by the grant. I mean,
Yeah.
which we would lose control and they'd mark it up, so that would not be a good idea.
Yeah, and I really see this person being like really
Yeah, it's not what you
embedded
would
in the
want.
village, in the office, so that they really understand the village's position in all of these and the other aspects of
And it's not
village
just a
life.
sewer project.
Yeah.
And to be sure the management of the grants is,
Yeah.
you know, not looking backwards, but
Looking forward, yeah.
So we have at least three more meetings. We need to finish this by the end of March, early April. So next meeting is in 2 weeks. I took down what you asked. We could run some numbers and maybe review them again before the meeting to kind of get some refinement. To see what the numbers look like, if this is the direction we want to go the next meeting.
right. Okay.
Thank you very much.
yeah,
Thank you,
it's
Charles.
great, Charles.
The ambulance, do you have any questions on the budget? No? Okay. Thank you.
Very helpful.
Okay. There's nothing else to discuss. I have a motion to adjourn.
So,
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
So that will adjourn the preliminary budget meeting.
Thank you.